to the Daily Flip podcast. I'm your host, Alex, and today we're going to be flipping through a story coming from our friends at Axios with the headline reading, Supreme Court allows Trump to fire federal workers. It's an interesting one, to say the least. It is a case that most people saw coming, and the Trump administration is very happy that has come down in their favor. But that doesn't mean there aren't the upset one or two people around Washington. Of course, we went today with our Daily Delight, a story meant to leave you feeling ready to take on the day, smiling, though I think about it, it is coming out a little bit later than normal, so to take on the night, to relax before you go to bed, let's put it that way. So, with that said, let's actually jump in to the article after we do our daily debate. So, does the executive have the overarching power to fire anybody within an executive branch? I think the answer is pretty straightforward, though, of course, some greater legal minds than mine, or even yours maybe, are able to answer with some nuanced opinions. So, with that, let's actually jump into the article. I already read you the headline. Now let's read you one of the first paragraphs. Quote, the big picture, the majority decision which lifts a federal judge's earlier order freezing the cuts gives the administration power to resume its goal of reshaping and scaling back federal agencies. Yes, but this is their denotation for separating different things. Quote, the justices noted in the unsigned opinion that they are not ruling on the legality of any specific layoff plans for the federal agencies, just that the government is likely to succeed in its argument that the executive order and memorandum are lawful. So they're not saying how they're going about laying them off, mainly because they haven't actually put together too many plans. And I say too many, there are a few different out there, but they're not saying whether or not the plan itself is legal. They're saying that, in theory, the government can do this, which makes it a little bit tricky for the Trump administration, because this means that it is open. Any further attempt to limit the federal government's executive branch and actually scale it down will actually have to be relitigated. Not that it has to. Maybe that's the wrong framing. It can be, and therefore it will be, so it has to be. But that doesn't necessarily mean, if the liberals decide to step aside, they said, no, we're not going to relitigate this, Donald Trump, he already got his way with the court. No, they're not going to say that. Of course, they're going to fight it at every single turn. Maybe even some Republicans that don't want to lose their jobs are going to fight it at every single turn. The point being, it can be relitigated, and it more than likely will be. But there was one dissent. Actually, I want to read Sotomayor's and Elena Kagan's agreeance with the majority ruling. Quote, the plans themselves are not before this court at this stage, and thus we have no occasion to consider whether they can and will be carried out consistent with the constraints of law. And then she also says, that was Sotomayor wrote that, and then they go on to say, I join the court's stay because it leaves the district court free to consider those questions, end quote. There was only one dissent as of right now, because, Ketanji Brown Jackson at least had to get her opinion in there. Quote, Liberal Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson dissented from the opinion, calling it the wrong decision at the wrong moment, especially given what little this court knows about what is actually happening on the ground, end quote. So basically, she's making an argument saying, well, we don't have any of the details of any of these plans, so how can we make any sort of ruling? Though, in theory, there should be a separation between the two. If you're a justice, you should be able to separate the legality of a proposed action versus the legality of a theory, so to speak, which is, in theory, the executive should be able to fire the people that work underneath them. I don't feel like it's too much of a stretch to say that lawyers deal with this and deal in the world of theory all the time. So why would it be that much different here? But that is not to restrict the limitations of the court. I'm not trying to say, oh, you can only rule on this, you can only rule on that. But to pretend as though this is not something that would fall within the purview. If you want to look at the federal government as a bureaucracy, maybe you can make an argument here. Maybe you can make layered statements about the intent of the original legislation and how it has been interpreted by the executive. Though if you think of the government like a company, which it's not, but if we're thinking in the most broad sense, why would a CEO not be able to fire somebody? That's not to say that there aren't layers of bureaucratic waft they have to go through, like talking to their division heads, their department heads, or even the board in order to approve certain firings. But if you're talking about even more specifically a CEO and his department, so say a CEO is operating and they're also a VP of a department, they can't have dominion over their department, basically saying this person deserves to be fired, this person deserves to stay on. It feels a little bit closed-minded. It feels a little bit simple. So with that, I think we're wrapping up with this article today. I didn't promise a super long one. It's going to be shorter than normal, under 6 minutes, but it is important to actually understand what this decision implies, because some people are saying, well, that means that they can fire whatever they want. No, it is only saying that they have the ability to. That doesn't mean that all the ways that they're going to do it is going to be approved. And with that, let's jump into our daily delight. This one is absolutely adorable. It comes from Dog Time again. And the headline reads, Video. Owner lists down top golden retrieval essentials. And it has a video attached, obviously, that goes through all of them and shows the golden retriever using them. Absolutely adorable. One of man's best friends, no doubt. And hopefully this leaves you dreaming about golden retriever puppies and something cute as you drift off into that temporary sleep. So, with that said, if you wanted to check out the stories in their entirety, both of them will be linked in the description below. The like and subscribe button. Also down there, you can find the podcast on Spotify, Spotify, as well as the Twitter handle at your DailyFlip, where I post links to these episodes on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, as well as 6 and 6, which comes out on Tuesday and Thursday. And that's meant to give you 6 stories from around the world in 6 minutes or less. With that said, stay safe, don't die.